All right. Welcome to the next episode of FieroCast. Let's start off the FieroCast with a Fiero fact. Did you know that on October 19th, 1991, that was the day that the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts started and was incorporated in the state of Illinois? That makes this year, 2020, the 29th year. So next year, you've got the big celebration of Fiorama 25, and you got the big celebration of the big 3-0 for the Fiero Club. Congratulations, guys. Keep it up. All right, let's get to it. Welcome today's guest, our special guest, Alex from Legit Street Rods. No, I screwed that up again. Legit Street Cars. You may know him most recently. He purchased the 1997 Low Rider Fiero that was in Low Rider magazine. Custom build. It kind of traveled along the U.S. for a little bit. He found it, purchased it, brought it home, and decided to get the hydraulics working and the engine working. So we're going to pick his brain, see what he's got, and what he plans to do with the car after he gets those two things completed. So, again, you can find our podcast at FieroFocus.com. You can also get us on YouTube and through our two Facebook pages at N.I.F.E Club and at Fiorama. So, before we begin, let us hear a word from one of our sponsors, and stay tuned at the end to hear what the Midwest Fiero Clubs is all about.
We know how hard it is to find Fiero parts. We also know that as years go by, finding parts isn't going to get any easier. The big box stores will never make new Fiero parts because our community is just too small. This is why we need to support the companies that support us. For nearly 30 years, the Fiero store has sponsored our club events, provided free technical support, and produced well over 150 exclusive parts that no big box store would even consider. So, next time you need Fiero parts, head over to thefierostore.com and browse through thousands of products that are specifically designed for your Fiero. That's fierostore.com, the world's largest source of Fiero parts.
All right. I love technology. All right. So let's just jump right in.
Cool.
I'd like to welcome everybody. This is Alex. He is the owner of Legit Street Cars, or is that just is that a company name, or is that a just a YouTube?
It's everything. It's YouTube. And it's also a company for me now. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about it. What is it, and what do you do with the company?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Mike. I appreciate it. Legit Street Cars. I started a YouTube channel about 3 years ago, and I honestly just started it for fun. I've been into the car hobby forever, and what kind of started it for me was 80s Pontiacs. And my first car was an 88 Trans Am GTA. So I had later on built a 2001 Trans Am WS6 that I still own today. I've had it for 18 years. So I started the channel to showcase that car. And what ended up happening was a lot of people started to follow me because I was a master certified technician for Mercedes. So I started posting some Mercedes videos. That took off. And then I just started to incorporate my love for GM as well, and those videos have done well. So right now the channel is pretty much anything that I truly find interesting will make it on there.
Nice. What really got me interested was not necessarily what maybe you can correct me, is it a replica or is it just somebody that took a Trans Am and made the N.I.F.E 4000 car?
Yeah, so what it is what I bought a few months, well, it was actually 2019, so about a year now. It was a 1985 Pontiac Fiber Trans Am, and one of the guys that built pretty much most of the Night Rider replica cars, like the professional grade Night Rider replica cars, it was his own personal car. And back in 91 to 94, he tried to duplicate the Banshee concept car of the 80s. I don't know if you remember that, but it's
Oh, yeah.
a really radical design off the Firebird. And so he spent about 3 years building this, and he tried to duplicate, the look of the Banshee. A lot of people thought it was the later Night Rider cars, it sort of looks like that, but no, I ended up getting a hold of this guy, or he got a hold of me actually after seeing the videos, and we chatted for a bit, and it was his own personal little project. So I found it at an auction in Albany, New York, and picked it up for like $1,000.
Oh, wow.
And it was an absolute blast. So when I saw the Fiero for sale, it was just on Facebook Marketplace. A subscriber had messaged it to me. They're like, check this out. And he saw the Banshee series as well. And I'm like, oh, that is all me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Banshee. I've got Hot Wheels. I actually have the actual press kit that they released, and it's got all of the actual full color slides that they would insert, and then they have the straight black and white pictures as well on high gloss, and it's got the release and all that other stuff on there. So it's to me it's a very interesting car. And when N.I.F.E 4000, it's just like, I was like, oh, that is so cool. But then I found out that it was based off of Mitsubishi
Right.
body. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't even a Firebird for the 4000.
Exactly.
Yeah, so a lot of people thought it was that. In the very beginning, in the first video I came out on with that car, I truly didn't know what it was. At that point, the person who built it hadn't reached out yet. So a lot of, I had mentioned in the video, like, hey, let me know what you guys think this is. It looks like someone put hundreds and hundreds of hours into custom bodywork into this thing. And that's what it was. And then that same guy that built it, he actually built the real Night Rider cars for the reboot in 2008, which was actually a Mustang.
Yeah.
And he built those cars. So the guy's kind of famous, like he in that world. And that was like one of my most fun projects. It was super weird. I was really nervous about it. Most people were used to me just fixing and modifying kind of normal, newer cars. So I'm like, oh my God, this is going to destroy my channel, but I don't care. And it ended up actually taking off. That series did really well. And but I kind of pride myself on taking on projects that I truly do enjoy. A lot of the YouTubers go the route of, buying Lamborghinis and weird, like exotic stuff like that. And I'm just not into it. So, so I picked up this Fiero Low Rider, and it has been one of the most fun projects I've had on the channel as well. It just kind of reminds me of the Banshee, really.
This hit the Fiero community market or Facebook probably, I want to say 3, 4, 5 months ago, and somebody had said they had found it, and they had were looking at it and stuff like that, and then it disappeared. And then I was flipping through on the Facebook, and your legit street cars popped up as a might be interested or suggestion for you. And then I'm like, oh, that car looks familiar. And I'm like, holy crap. So, and then, it's something that is a well-known car in the Fiero community. But it's very little is known about it besides it being in the Low Rider magazine. So it's one of those kind of hidden gems out there.
Yeah, and it really crossed, it kind of combined two very different communities, the Fiero community and the Low Rider community. So like I got a bunch of feedback from Fiero people out there like yourself, people emailing me, and same thing from the Low Rider community. The entire family of the guy who built the car, who was the original owner, reached out to me, the sister, the uncle, the son, the nephew.
Wow.
They all sent me separate emails. And the person who built that he passed away a couple of years ago, but he had also built a few other just really top-notch lowriders. And he did this all at his house. I figured it had gone to a shop like in California or something.
Yeah.
He painted it at his house. He did everything to it himself. And I mean, he built himself a real show car. And it doesn't look that way now, but just looking at the magazines and looking at the details underneath, I mean, the entire underbody is painted. There's little like stenciled in accents that like you wouldn't see unless you had a mirror under the car, which I'm assuming they did.
Mm-hmm.
It's the detail is unbelievable.
I would have loved to have seen it in its heyday and just to see what it looked like up and close and in person, stuff like that. But just, I mean, looking at your video and everything like that, the interior looks like it's a little run down, but like, was it sitting outside, inside? Did you get any information of like where it was?
So the guy I bought it from, he had it, so he had it for maybe a year, but his friend owned it for about 3 years and claimed that it last ran, I believe, about 5 years ago, but it'd basically been outside for, I would say, at least 3 years. It was a little bit difficult to get exact numbers from the guy, but yeah, it looks like it sat outside. The interior is actually, it's intact, like it's all there and where it's supposed to be, and it doesn't seem like it was, sitting in mold and gunk and stuff like that. What really looks bad on camera, which really isn't the end of the world, is they used cloth, basically like a microfiber type thing, to wrap the entire interior, and it just got beat by the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of like toasted it. But yeah, other than that, it's not really all that bad. I mean, obviously, all that would need to be replaced. But
is the exterior paint or is it a wrap?
Oh no, it's painted. It's all
it?
custom painted. Like, yeah, when the family reached out, he was an artist, and I think his son worded it pretty nicely. He was an artist, really. That was his trade, but he used cars as his canvas.
Wow.
And that was all painted at his house, which in today's day and age, that would even be an intricate wrap. But this guy painted it.
Yeah.
And they sent me some pictures of some of his other cars, and they were just so nice. But it's a shame. I'd heard from a guy who followed the car. Basically, after the original owner sold it, he sold it to a younger guy in Florida, and he said that's kind of when it started to go downhill. He just didn't appreciate the car, and then it ended up in Wisconsin somehow, and that's where I got it from.
So you did you have to hunt for this, or did you just see this up as an auction or a for sale?
No, it was just a regular for sale listing on Facebook Marketplace. I would say 75% of the cars that you see on my channel, I end up finding because subscribers kind of send me a lead. So at this stage in the game, people kind of know what I'm into, and they'll send me an email like, "Hey, I found this," and most of them I don't buy, but every once in a while, this guy realized I was in Chicago from the videos, and he was like, "This is only an hour and a half from you."
Yeah, very
so
cool.
I'd gone back and forth with the guy for probably about a month, and I ended up getting it. I think it was 1,000 or 1,100, one of the two. And, clean title, it says 40,000 miles, which I believe. Low riders usually don't have that many miles.
Mm-hmm. So you find it, you make an offer, you get it, you bring it back home, and do you then just okay, what do I get myself into? Or is it something that you really looked at and said, all right, I'm going to start picking away at this right now?
No, so what I do on a lot of projects, especially the weird ones, is I buy it completely. I bought this sight unseen. I paid a shipper to pick it up. I just didn't have the time. So I bought it completely sight unseen, total mystery, and I got it. I needed a couple weeks before I could start filming with it. So I legitimately put it in the garage and I didn't look at it. And people always think I'm crazy. I did the same thing with the Banshee. They're like, how do you sleep at night knowing that you have a car that you haven't inspected yet? And the reason I do it is I want the first time I look at the car to really be on camera with the viewers. So those are all real reactions of me finding stuff. It's impossible to figure it all out and then recreate that excitement.
Right,
so
right.
I had no idea. I started filming the first video and I was like, well, if I inspect this entire car and it ends up being such a project that I don't even want to do it, I'm just probably going to throw this footage away and get rid of the car. But at least it's real. And I realized it seemed like a pretty good candidate. And at that time, I'd reached out to another YouTuber friend of mine. He flew in from Wichita, Kansas to do this with me. So he's in the first 3 videos. So it is both of our first times doing everything.
That's
We didn't know if the engine was locked. We didn't know anything.
that's cool. That's
Yeah.
exciting too, because I mean, now that looking back at the videos, it's like you can definitely see your guys' excitement. Plus, you can also see like your if something goes wrong or something, like when the hydraulic chamber was burning up. It's like that was probably the first time that you guys saw that. And it's like, yeah, you can definitely tell your straight out reactions. Like, holy crap, that thing got hot.
The reactions are real when we do everything wrong in the video, and it still makes it into the video, because we really didn't. We both not worked on anything like that before, so we originally ran it on 12 volts, which is like a big no-no. It needed at least 24 volts to not heat up the pump like crazy. But man, we learned a lot, and then having John there, he was big into the stereo. He got the stereo working. I kind of worked more on the engine and getting it running. And yeah, let's see, the 4th episode is actually coming out on Friday, and that's a big one. I mean, I get it running well, driving, and it's back. I mean, it's back on the road. It runs and drives. I drove it today.
Awesome. What so when you first started the cameras rolling and you guys started looking at everything, what was the first thing that you guys wanted to tackle? Was it the getting it running, getting the hydraulics going, or just the overall, like, looking it over first?
So I really wanted to make sure the engine was good. And I was so curious on whether or not the engine was good. So the first thing we did was just simply turn the crank, and it turned fine. So I took this car in such little steps. And I say this, I forget how I worded it in the video, but it was almost like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Like, as long as we moved on to the next thing and it was okay, the Fiero was getting more new parts. So like, as soon as we figured out the engine wasn't locked and it had oil, it's like, okay, let's figure out fuel and spark. We figured out the distributor was totally shot, put a whole new distributor, coil, cap rotor, all that good stuff. And then we got spark. So it's like, okay, fine. Now we can move on, to fuel. So I didn't want to just jump into just replacing everything. I wanted to really figure out what was actually faulty. But at the end of the day, if the engine was totally locked and the trans was bad and some craziness like that, we had the hydraulics to play with, so the series could still go on, because that's so cool. You don't need the engine running for that. So,
right.
Yeah. And then testing that was easy. We just needed one battery. It worked. And I'm like, cool, we're moving on. Let's get 3 more batteries.
The one thing I did notice was that when you guys were testing the hydraulics, you had just a regular, was it 12 volt going into it? And it was extremely slow. And then as you started working up on the voltage, the car actually started hopping and doing what it was supposed to be doing. What is the true voltage that you need in order to operate a hydraulic system like that?
So come to find out, and this is from a lot of emails from a lot of knowledgeable people, the system needs basically a minimum of 24 volts. But some of these pumps can work all the way up to 96.
Oh, wow.
So it's funny. The pump was painted and clear coated and everything, just like the car, because normally there'd be like a tag on there that would tell us what it should be running at. So we didn't know. I think the tag was removed and then they just painted over it. So what we did was, but from the general consensus was, most of these are 48 volt systems. So we stepped it up, incrementally. So 12 volts was bad. Wires were heating up like crazy. It was just too much, amperage. Doubled the voltage, half the amperage. So 24 seemed real nice. 36 was nicer, and 48 was just perfect. And then we learned that the solenoids and the switches and all that had to run on 24 volts. So we hooked that up properly, and we have a really nice, proper, battery. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I loved watching the videos because you can see the step by step and even the precautions that you guys were taking to make sure that everything was going to function correctly and fire properly and stuff like that. The looking at the engine, once you guys got, you knew that it had spark and everything like that. You guys cleaned everything out. What would you say was probably the most difficult thing to either find or fix during your process of elimination on working backwards as things were moving along?
Well, yeah, I gotta say, nothing was extremely difficult because, these cars are fairly basic, and John and I, John is from the channel Watch JR, go on YouTube. He's got a ton of experience, and so do I. So, once we had spark, we knew obviously we needed to move on to fuel. We had smelled some of the fuel just by hitting the Schrader valve. There was just a little tiny bit in there that we could smell, and it was pure varnish. Like it was, exactly what you would think a super old gasoline would smell like. So we put power to the pump. It wasn't doing anything. It seemed like the fuel pump was totally locked. So, what you guys will see in the episode that's coming out Friday is that I have to drop the entire tank, and I'm sure all the Fiero guys have done this before. But I dropped the tank to do the fuel pump, and as you can imagine, the fuel looks like Coke.
Oh yeah,
Pepsi. It's brown. It's just nasty. The fuel pump had deteriorated to nothing. There's crap in the tank and everything.
Wow.
But I cleaned it out as best as I could. To be honest, if it was a full restoration car, I honestly think it would need a new fuel tank. There was just so much, garbage in there that I cleaned out the bowl that the pump sits in, but around it, you could still hear some of it flashing around. I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, so that was an easy diagnosis, a GM fuel pump from the 80s, no big deal. So I got that going. Played around with the timing a little bit, and and then the injectors were really bad. So I put all new injectors in it in this video. So I get it started on its own fuel system, once I put the tank back in, and it's running on like 4 out of 6 cylinders.
That's
and
not bad.
You know what? I'm not even going to get too deep into this. I'm like, after seeing that fuel, I'm like, there's no chance these injectors survived.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. Popped 6 new injectors in, tested the fuel pressure regulator. It was holding vacuum fine. And it runs great. It fires up. There's no smoke out of the exhaust, no weird noises. It seems like a 40,000 mile, 2.8 liter.
Do you think most of those miles were pre hydraulic and everything like that?
Yeah. So the guy bought it brand new in 86 or 85 possibly. And he started modifying it, I think about 6 or 7 years later. So just having driven it now, it's not a car you'd want to put any real amount of miles on. It is a drive it to the local car show, hop around a little bit with the suspension and call it a day. Like you would never actually want to cruise this thing. It is such a rough ride. You wouldn't want to put any real miles on it. So I would imagine it just hit the show car circuit after it was completely built, and that's it.
Yeah. How when you mentioned suspension, how bad was the suspension from sitting, or was it? Because I noticed that it was, some of the suspension was painted. A lot of the undercarriage was painted as well. So with the hopping, with it sitting for so long and stuff like that, everything's still in really good condition, or do you think that eventually, it'll have to be replaced?
Yeah, I would say so. And what's crazy is it actually has Honda control arms and then custom control arms in the rear. Obviously the hydraulic cylinders and the springs are all custom made for a Fiero. They don't make hydraulics kits for Fieros.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is super custom. I don't even know where you would source any of this stuff, to be honest with you. But it didn't seem super worn out, like as far as ball joints being loose or anything. But like all the bushings were pretty dry rotted, and the boots over the joints were dry rotted. Just driving it, I literally drove it around my neighborhood, just city streets. It pulls, to one side.
Yeah.
And who knows? There's no such thing as an alignment, I don't think, on these cars anymore. Like, So yeah, the whole steering and suspension would need to be looked at, and major alignments on there.
What do you feel as far
yeah, I
as?
mean, there was enough.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just
I was
going
going to say,
to.
like, no big leaks from anything. That's all.
Okay. As far as completion goes, what do you look at as far as what you feel that you put into it is what your completion of the car would be, running and hydraulics, or do you look
Yep.
at putting more emphasis on and
No,
getting
so
painted?
my goal from the beginning was to get the car running, driving with a functional hydraulic system. I've met that goal. I'm not going to get into the body and the paintwork stuff. It's not my trade. I'd have to sublet it out. And I'm just not there. I'd rather, this is such a great car for, say, a beginner person that's in the lowrider scene, or to be honest with you, someone that has always dreamed of owning a legitimate lowrider, but doesn't have the tens of thousands, if not, some of these cars are six-figure cars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're one of the most expensive cars to build. Think of restoring an old car to begin with is really expensive, but now you have a completely custom one-off suspension. You know, so it's not weird to have $100,000 into a lowrider, you know, if it's done up properly. So, you know, I believe this car is worth, I don't know, somewhere in the $5,000 range as it is now.
But like you
And
said, it's a good
I,
it's a good beginner car for somebody who
oh my
wants
God,
to get into
yeah,
something like that.
totally. I mean, you could buy this car, and I mean, you know, it looks like hell right now with the paint, right? But you could buy this car, and you have a running well and driving platform with a fully, you know, complete hydraulic system, and you're ready to go. You can get in the hobby, and so I'm gonna pass it along to the next guy that will do the paint and body work, and make it however they want it. But I'm not going to undertake that. It's just not my thing to go that far into that. For me, I love the mechanical aspect of it. So it's rare that I get into crazy, you know, paint job and body work stuff. I have a body shop I work with, but yeah, this is just a little bit too much, and I'm just simply not interested in getting that into it. You know, the body work.
Well, if somebody were to ask, you know, you've got how looking at the interior. I know you guys are dabbling with the speaker too, or a stereo system. How much work do you think is needed to either replace the interior completely, or with what is there? How real bad is it? I know you said there was some sun fading, but
Yeah, you know what? It's not that bad because there are a lot of custom pieces that are made essentially with cardboard, and then they're wrapped with a cushion and fabric, and that was kind of the style, you know, back then, I guess. But all those pieces are still there and intact and installed and everything. So those are the pieces that probably took a long time to make.
mm-hmm.
But now at this point, they just simply need to be rewrapped in whatever fabric you choose. So you could bring it probably to any upholstery set shop, even one that doesn't do custom work, that just does general repairs. And I think they could take care of the interior. I guess I don't really know, you know, what an estimate would be on something like that, but I would say, you know, half of what it probably cost to build originally. So the interior really is not that bad. And then as far as the exterior, the biggest thing was, a lot of Fiero guys corrected me on this, but well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's an 86. So does it have a glass quarter, you know, a quarter glass on the side? This car doesn't.
The early models did have glass, and then it turned to a gloss plastic acrylic kind of style.
Okay.
And that was one of my kind of big questions was, and I was kind of hoping that you guys would have peeled back those pieces a little bit, just to see if those original quarter panels were underneath there,
Yeah.
or if they were just kind of coated over and covered up.
I think I was thinking about doing that, but it would have turned into a big mess, and then I would have had these big holes on the side of the car, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I'm going to assume, because where the Bondo has separated, the filler has separated, looks to be the exact shape of a little quarter glass,
Okay.
you know? So I think they literally just caked it over. And because it wasn't meant to be outside, this car, you know, in the weather, especially like Wisconsin, you know, getting snowed on and rained on, that it just probably got so cold and so hot that it just cracked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as far as the paint and bodywork, that's the biggest custom part of this car is whatever they did there on the side. So that would all need to be like, basically chiseled out and maybe put back to factory or just redone with the intentions of keeping the car in a garage. I think it'd be fine. There's plenty of cars. My Banshee had like, in some places like an inch thick of fiberglass filler, like a lot of these custom body kit type cars are like that.
Exactly.
And whatever, but yeah, the paint body work, obviously it depends on where you go, but it's not smashed and there's no rust, so those are the two big things. The glass is all intact. It doesn't have rust building up around the windshield or anything, those real detrimental issues that turn into a big nightmare. It doesn't have any of that. So it basically just needs to be stripped and sanded down. And it'd be, I think, a really good candidate for restoration.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even when you were walking around the front, there's some, paint damage on the front and the back bumpers, but that's if the car was outside for as long as it was, it's going to get sun damaged. And then the one piece at the vent that's on the front hood that was inside that you guys found. Again, real easy to fiberglass that back in or glue that back in. I know one of the big questions would be the rust under when you had it up. Was there any rust that you noticed or anything within like the trunk area? So it sounds like it's been kept pretty good.
Yeah, I think what happened was it was probably kept inside for the vast majority of its life. And it sat outside for roughly 3 to 5 years, but it wasn't driven in salt or anything like that. So I think it was just rained and snowed on top of. And that's about it. But yeah, I mean, the chrome control arms, the chrome looks like hell. It's kind of surface rusted a little bit, but there's no rot, or any holes or anything like that. So, the bones are all there. And then, even I took the entire super long gas tank out and even the outside of that, it looked great. I mean, it was all painted and clear coated too, so that probably helps. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So it was probably mint when they did that. I mean, it's funny. Like I replaced the fuel filter, and like half of it is painted purple and clear coated, and it's got a little flake in it, and then the top half is like original. So it's kind of funny, like taking stuff apart like that.
Well, it's fun just to see. It come back to life. And like I said, I mean, I remember seeing this. I've been in the Fiero community for, over 20 years. I bought mine in 97 and I started customizing it. And you look at some of these and, you see these and you're like, I think I saw this one back probably like early 2000s. And, because, you see it and then you never see it again. You're like, what happened to it? And then it pops up and you're like, holy crap, I remember that. And then you look at, the photos that are like, well, wow, that's kind of been really damaged. But just watching the videos and thank you for, doing this, because it kind of energized the Fiero community, because everybody was like, hey, I remember that car. And it's just fun watching somebody bring back a Fiero from the dead in essence, because this car has been gone for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean it was definitely left for dead at this point. I mean, it had so many bad parts, but God, I gotta say that it just worked out so well though. Like the parts that were bad, it was like such a culmination. Like the fuel pump, the distributor, the coil,
It's and that's
master,
and
slave, like all replaceable parts.
Exactly, and those are all our kind of issues that we have. And a lot of people don't leave their house without an ignition coil, a distributor in the trunk in the car somewhere, or an ignition module, and because that's what goes.
Oh yeah, and I remember a lot of this from my 3rd gen Firebird days too. The little ignition module under the distributor, or under the cap, they would go bad all the time. And this thing stood no chance. It was like a solid block of rust basically, but then the injectors, like 80s injectors, they all go bad. they're original, that'd be like a miracle in itself.
Yeah.
So it was just like a lot of fun stuff to replace. Not the most difficult, as far as diagnosis goes, luckily. And then, God, the hydraulic system. I mean, I will say this though, and you guys will hear this in the final video. My goal was to get it running, driving, and bouncing at the same time, which I did. And I literally got maybe 5 minutes out of it, and the pump, the hydraulic pump is bad now. And so many lowrider guys reached out in the very first video, and they're like, look, if that pump is that old, it needs to be rebuilt. Like, lowrider guys rebuild these pumps like all the time. It's almost like a maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So it kept on going out on me today. My wife was filming me just driving up and down the street, hitting the switches. And I'm like, no, why? I just need like 10 more minutes of good, hitting the switches, some good footage. And she had a little mallet. It's just like a starter. And we realized that if we tapped the motor a little bit with mallet, we'd get a few more tries out of it. So my wife's holding the camera and a mallet in one hand. I'd hit some switches, everything's going great. Then it would stop. So I would pull over. She'd pop the hatch holding it with one hand and just beating on it was hilarious. And then finally I got a little like puff of smoke from the motor. I'm like, we're done. So it'll need a new motor for whoever the next owner is, but it was fun. It was just such a fun car.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's been really enjoyable watching, and thank you for doing that, because it rejuvenated a lot of Fiero people too, and especially in this year, we need something that's new and exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the Fiero community has been amazing. I mean, there was the injectors that I got for the car. I was like, where am I going to find these things? A local Fiero guy. He's like, I got you covered. Mm-hmm. I met up with him like an hour away, maybe at the most. He hooked me up with these injectors and a little model Fiero car. And but everybody was like, hey, if you need parts, go to here, will you include it? And it was just very, very helpful. And it just reminded me a lot of when I was big into the third gen Firebird scene. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it just feels exactly the same. And I was like, this is great.
We've got a lot of, we call our Fiero community our Fiero family, because everybody helps everybody. And no matter who you are, what you're doing, where you're at, there's always going to be somebody that will help in and jump in and go through hoops for you. So.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been awesome. I will have to sell the car. I mean, I can't keep them all, but, I'm just excited that it's at this point. I kind of kicked it off for the next guy to do the body restoration, and the car will live on. And I always end up staying in contact, especially with some of the more unique cars, like the Banshee. The Banshee was a good example where I did basically the exact same thing. That car was dead on arrival, locked engine, mystery car, whatever. By the time I was done with like 4 or 5 videos, it ran like a top, perfectly tuned, and it was running and driving. You could, daily drive the thing if you wanted. And I sold it to a guy who was a collector in Michigan of just 80s like memorabilia and cool stuff like that. And now it's getting stripped down and repainted and just perfected like the body. So
nice.
That's probably what's going to happen with this car too.
Yeah, and I mean, and if for some reason you have it still come September, or if the new owner, if they're local, the Northern Illinois Fiero Enthusiasts host a big Fiorama show in St. Charles, right on the Fox River.
Oh, cool.
And
well, I'll definitely keep you guys. I'll put you in contact with whoever the new owner is.
Perfect.
Especially if they're local.
Yeah.
I've already had a few local people reach out, and I really want to sell it locally.
Yeah.
So.
And that would be great because, like I said, we're right on the Fox River in downtown at St. Charles Potawatomi Park, and this was supposed to be our 25th anniversary year, but next year it's the 30th anniversary of the club and the 25th anniversary of Fiorama. So that would be awesome. Even if it's not 100% running and it's trailerable, I mean, just to see it and again in person and just to kind of say, hey, this is back in the community. So
yeah, well, definitely. I'll let you know for sure, and then hopefully if it's local, I mean, I'd love to come out with a new owner too. I might not have a Fiero, but I'll bring my Trans Am or something.
Awesome. But no, and any last thoughts on the car? fun playing with it while you had it?
Yeah, I mean, overall, yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of a cool time capsule to me, and it was fun to also find some of the stuff that was untouched. Like if you pop, the front hood, I guess. It looked like I ended up taking the spare tire out, and it was originally. I don't think it looked like it had never been out of the car.
Yeah,
PO codes,
we don't
there
really.
on the driver's side were they're still laminated, and it
Yep.
was just, oh man, it was just great.
You-
I loved it. So
And again, it's still it's an original low mileage Fiero modified.
yeah, it's a clean title, 40,000 mile Fiero.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if it was all original with 40,000 miles, it'd be quite the collectible.
Exactly. Yeah. The on a side note, the last Fiero ever made is going up for auction next month. So
I saw that.
Yeah.
Well, any guesses from the community on what that could go for?
we're
Because doesn't it have like no miles at all?
I believe it's got like 40, and that's it. Or five.
440, right? Or 40,000. No, it's got
No, I think it's like 400. Let me. I know it's low.
Yeah, I remember reading it's ridiculously low, like possibly one of the lowest mileage ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think that would go for?
I'm gonna say anywhere between 50 and 75,000.
Like, what's the most expensive original Fiero that you've seen sell
Oh,
so far?
60.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then yeah, totally.
And that's
You
and
know,
that was
I
one of
know.
the like the ones that you see in the museums, kind of. But yeah, I think that was the highest that I've ever seen one go. But this one has a lot of history behind it. So
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like, to probably the general public who's not into Fieros, that probably sounds like a lot of money for a Fiero, but that is such a chunk of history right there.
Exactly.
I can see that being actually of value, where maybe in 10 or 20 years or whatever, especially if it's kept in the same condition, I mean, it could hit six figures.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a piece of automotive history, really.
Yeah.
Very unique car. And the GM never really had anything else like it, really. After.
No.
So, yeah, that's going to be cool to see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what how that ends up. But no, that's there's a lot of history behind that. Kind of surprised that it's going to auction, but either something maybe happened to the owner, or he was just time to give it up. But
yeah, it's bizarre what cars end up being sold. I mean, at one point in time, this Low Rider was mint, and the guy decided to sell it.
yeah,
Like, it's crazy, but it happens,
well, I thank you for spending the time with me tonight. It's been a honor, and it's been a pleasure. Any final words to for this project?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'd absolutely love to see it out in September, at the show. So I'm going to try my best to, it's out of my powers if it stays local, but if it does, I'm going to try and get it out there for sure.
Very cool. Thank you. But yeah, you've got my info. Anything else you want to talk about? Legit street cars, anything like that? How people can find you again? How people can watch you?
Yeah, so it's Legit Street Cars on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Kept it the same, through everything. So just one word. And video number 4 is coming out soon. So you guys can check out the entire playlist. It's all organized. So as soon as you start watching the first one, it'll go to the second, whatever. You can watch kind of the whole series. But yeah, just Legit Street Cars on YouTube, and you can check out the rest of the cars, including the Banshee, which is still getting viewed.
Awesome. I'm going to watch that again, because like I said, I'm a fan of that. I'm a big fan of Knight Rider. I met Hasselhoff
Cool.
once and got to sit in the original Hero car kit. So I think it was like 10. But yeah, and then later on I got to meet George Barris. So that was exciting. But,
yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, one of my another dream 80s GM for me is a Grand National. So I wouldn't be surprised if you guys see a Grand National on the channel at some point.
That's a car that I would love to have too. Yeah. But yeah, that's another story
Yeah,
and another day.
one day. I think those are going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. So yeah, but I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
thank you. And do you mind if I put links to your channel on our page, and then as well as a link to the Low Rider Fiero videos so people can see them?
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't mind at all. Share away.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem.
And
Yep, and I'll shoot you an email. Whenever I know who buys this thing at some point.
very cool. Yeah, I would love to see
Okay.
this in person, and especially out at a show too. So,
Yeah, definitely. So cool, Mike. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
oh, thank you.
Have you asked yourself, what is the Midwest Fiero Clubs? Well, the Midwest Fiero Clubs, which is also a region of the AACA, is a dedicated group of enthusiasts whose passion is to promote and preserve the Pontiac Fiero and the Fiero community. The Midwest Fiero Clubs consists of members from existing Fiero clubs across the U.S. The Midwest Fiero Club's intent is to support member clubs and promote the Fiero-related events that they offer. The intent is to enable enthusiasts to discover events in their areas other than their own, and to warrant participation. This has created a tighter-knit Fiero community of the owners and created some great regional shows that may not have otherwise happened. So, how do I find out about them? You can visit the website at midwestfieroclubs.aaca.com, or just Facebook them at Midwest Fiero Clubs AACA and like them.
All right, that will do it. Just to give you an update, if you guys were following eBay, Alex did put the car up on eBay. It looks like it has sold for around $10,000, so that's a great price. Unfortunately, just to give you an update here, it is October 20th. Alex did find out that there were some bad bids, fake users and fake bids, so he had to clean all that out, and in the process he is going to relist the car back on eBay. So if anybody wants to have a chance on bidding on this, again, I think it's going to be a great car. It runs. The hydraulic motor just has to be replaced, but I think the next stage is getting the interior and the exterior paint back to what it was back in '97. So if anybody wants to take on that project, go ahead, log into eBay, bid on that car. I think it's going to be great. If you do and you happen to win, we'd love to see you at Fiorama next year. Again, if you're local, St. Charles, Potawatomi Park. So Alex will keep us updated as things progress. But bad news, but good news, it still is going to be up for a new owner. So again, hope you enjoyed this episode of FieroCast. We hope that, if you want the car, bid on it. I think it's going to be a great car. Thank you for listening, and a big thank you to Alex, the Fiero Store, and Midwest Fiero Clubs. Until the next episode, good night, and keep Fieroing.